4-year-old's cries as she rushes out of McDonald's bathroom. Mom found what was inside and immediately calls authorities. Little Kayla started screaming and ran towards her mother. The other diners at McDonald's stared in concern. Why was she sobbing? What happened to her? Eventually, she got to her mother with a terrified expression on her face. Kayla's mother was in a panic. What had happened to her daughter in the bathroom? She tried to calm the girl down, but she could tell something was seriously wrong. Then she noticed the blood on Kayla's legs, and all hell broke loose. The first day of the new year was always a special time for Mother Nicole and her daughter Kayla. It gave them a chance to spend the whole day together before Nicole had to go back to work. It was their favorite thing to do, and they had big plans for today. Nicole decided to treat Kayla to a McDonald's Happy Meal. Her little girl loved the nuggets, and they could take the food to their local park and have a picnic. They began to get dressed, and Kayla was twirling around the house, singing from excitement. If only they knew what lay ahead at McDonald's. Nicole was a single parent to her daughter Kayla. They lived in a small town and had a great supportive community. Everywhere they went, friendly neighbors stopped to wish them a happy new year and chat with the happy family about their plans for the day. With the warm weather, Nicole decided to go to the park first instead of having a picnic later. The pair had already eaten a large breakfast, so Nicole knew that Kayla would have to work up an appetite. If only she knew the life-changing experience Kayla was about to have, Nicole would have kept her daughter at home. Their local park was only a short walk from where they lived. Kayla was so excited she began running ahead, but Nicole called her back. She never liked her daughter too far from her sight. In this day and age, you could never be too careful with who was around any corner. When they got to the park, the mom and daughter were thrilled that some of Kayla's friends were already there. It looks like lots of local families had decided to take advantage of the sunshine. Kayla zoomed off to be with her friends and Nicole began chatting with the other parents. But danger was lurking. This local park had all sorts of wonderful things for children to play on, but the best thing was the slide. Kayla loved to feel the wind in her hair and could go down the slide 100 times before moving on. Nicole watched from a safe distance and loved seeing how happy her daughter was. She turned her head for 1 minute, and that was all it took for a scream to pierce the playground. All the parents became alert and looked for the kids, scanning to see who had made the noise. Nicole's stomach dropped as she realized it was Kayla. She could see Kayla sitting on the ground and ran over to find out what had happened. Through tears, Kayla told her she had fallen off the slide. It was more of a shock than an injury, but she needed a cuddle from her mom before she could start playing again. After a quick hug, Nicole walked back to the group of parents standing to the side. Everyone asked if Kayla was okay, and Nicole smiled and explained the accident. Each parent has been there, but it never makes it easier to hear your child in pain. Nicole had no idea what else was in store later. Each child always has a different noise they make to get their parents' attention. It's important they always know they can call for help to feel secure. As a parent, you begin to notice different levels of screams and can gauge how serious the situation is. Kayla and Nicole were closer than a regular family because it was just the two of them. Nicole would do anything for Kayla to make sure she was safe. Unfortunately, she couldn't control everything. Was this family prepared to face the consequences of a terrible incident? After a couple of hours, Kayla asked her mom if it was finally time to go to McDonald's. She was getting tired and could wait for chicken nuggets. Nicole smiled and realized she was a little hungry too. They said goodbye to their friends and left the park for an early supper. McDonald's was another short walk. Their neighborhood was really convenient for having all the necessities close by. Kayla's school and a grocery store were also within walking distance. The only problem was the local teenagers who also lived in the district. Nicole held her daughter's hand and kept her eyes open for any trouble. Nicole had been a teenager once and was reminded of the drama and constant peer pressure to match what her friends were doing, regardless of the consequences. She knew a group of teenagers could be dangerous and always kept her guard up. Kayla was so sweet and unaware of her mother's concern. She was just excited for a happy meal. When they walked into McDonald's, Nicole was disappointed to see a big group already taking up most of the seating area. She held her daughter's hand and got into line. The teens were loud and raucous, but would they cause any harm? Nicole tried to stay calm, her only concern was for Kayla's safety. As Nicole and Kayla waited in line, A loud noise broke out from behind them. Nicole picked up her daughter and held her protectively as teenagers were fighting by the door. Kayla covered her ears and buried her head into her mother's shoulder. Their small community had a lot of perks, but unfortunately, this was not one of them. The staff had to intervene, and the teens began throwing their fries and yelling at the employees instead of each other. Finally, they left, but two girls stayed behind. Nicole wouldn't feel safe until they were back at their own home. Was a Happy Meal worth this? It was finally their turn to order, and McDonald's had quieted down. The two teen girls that had stayed behind were mostly scrolling on their phones and ignoring everyone else. Kayla was excited about her Happy Meal and Nicole decided to have a chicken sandwich. They found a table and dug into the warm, delicious food. Kayla was happy and enjoyed making funny designs with ketchup packets. Nicole didn't want to scold her for the mess, but they would definitely need to use the bathroom after this meal. Who would have known this would be the last place they should go? Kayla finished her food before Nicole and asked to go to the bathroom by herself. The pair were sitting close by, so Nicole felt it was okay. When Kayla got to the bathroom, she looked back at her mother in surprise. The door was locked. Nicole told her just to wait and assumed it was the staff cleaning up. She took out her cell phone to quickly check her messages and missed something extremely important. As Kayla was patiently waiting, suddenly, she could hear giggles on the other side of the bathroom door. This felt a little strange, but she didn't know if she should do anything. Then the door opened, and Kayla got nervous. Two teenage girls came out of the bathroom, still giggling. They saw Kayla and continued laughing as they walked away. What was so funny? Kayla couldn't wait any longer and finally ran into the bathroom to an empty stall. It didn't take long for her to figure out the girl's evil joke. As Kayla was about to sit down, she felt something weird and sticky on her thigh. She moved away from the toilet and instantly had pain in the back of her legs. She looked down and realized she was bleeding. Kayla knew this wasn't normal and started to cry. She didn't feel safe to use the toilet even though her bladder felt like it would explode. She pulled her pants back up and ran to find her mom. Why would anyone make a bathroom a dangerous place? Nicole heard Kayla before she saw her and immediately panicked. What was wrong? It never occurred to Nicole that something would happen to her daughter in the bathroom. This was a public space that was cleaned and available to everyone. The problem was who had used it right before Kayla did. Nicole went into the bathroom with Kayla to get to the bottom of what was wrong and suddenly saw her daughter's legs were bleeding. Her heart raced, and her pulse quickened. What was the meaning behind this? She scanned the bathroom and couldn't believe what she saw. When Nicole took a closer look, there was definitely a substance on the toilet seat. She grabbed some toilet paper to wipe it off and was shocked when it got stuck and didn't move. Nicole gasped. This was superglue. She immediately understood that when Kayla had gone to get on the toilet, her legs had become stuck. She went into the next stall and was shocked to see her daughter's blood on the seat. Nicole was furious and so red. She wanted someone to pay for this now. Kayla had tearfully told her who had left the bathroom before she entered, and Nicole ran out to see if they were still there. The girls had known they couldn't stick around and were nowhere to be seen in the dining area. Furious, Kayla went to find the manager. How could they let something like this happen, and what were they going to do? The manager on duty had never seen anything like this. It wasn't something they were going to forget quickly. Joanna had worked at McDonald's for over 15 years. In her time, she had moved up to manager and believed in treating all of her staff fairly. She wasn't from this neighborhood and was surprised at how terrible some of the customers were. She thought she had seen a lot of pranks, but nothing compared to this. Nicole ran to the counter, asking to speak to the manager, and thankfully Joanna was close by. She could tell by this woman's face that something terrible had happened. When she heard the details, she thought she would be sick. How could this have happened in her restaurant? Nicole was so mad she was having trouble putting together a sentence. Joanna was trying to understand what was wrong, but Nicole couldn't stop yelling. Finally, she shouted out superglue in the bathroom. Joanna was truly confused. Why would anyone leave superglue in the bathroom? They went back together, and once Joanna saw Kayla's tear-stained face, she was in shock. How was this possible? Why would anyone do this to a child? She knew she had to get to the bottom of this and make sure this young family was safe, but how could she catch the criminals? Kayla was an emotional mess. She couldn't stop crying, and the pain in her legs made everything worse. She didn't understand what had happened and wanted her mom to make it better. Why did this happen today? Nicole picked up Kayla, and they left McDonald's. It was time to go home, where Nicole would call the authorities. Joanna promised to cooperate and understood why they couldn't stay. She couldn't imagine trying to explain this to such a young girl when she barely understood it herself. Would the local police be able to catch these bullies? When the girls got back to their home, Nicole ran Kayla a bath and soaked her sore skin. She carefully applied band-aids and took pictures to make sure the authorities knew how serious this was. Kayla fell asleep cuddled against her mother, and Nicole picked up the phone to finally call for help. She couldn't believe how the day had started and how it was ending. She held her daughter tighter and wished there was something she could do to make her forget everything that had happened. She did everything possible to shelter Kayla. How had she failed her today? When Kayla and Nicole left McDonald's, Joanna quickly cleaned up the bathrooms and called the local police. This was far worse than any silly teenage prank. This had severe consequences, and Joanna wanted to do everything possible to get to the bottom of it. The police arrived and quickly went into action. They would need security footage, but the picture was so grainy that it was hard to clearly identify anyone. They questioned the staff about the fight that had broken out and tried to get a clear description of the two girls that had stayed behind. The clock was ticking to catch them before anyone else got hurt. When Nicole called the police, they told her 2 officers would come to the house and needed to speak to Kayla. McDonald's had already contacted them, but they needed to get more information from the person who had seen them last. Nicole didn't know if Kayla would be ready to talk to the police and worried about scaring her daughter even more. It felt like all day she had failed in protecting her. How could she make sure not to let anything else happen in the future? The police knocked on the door, and it was now or never. Slowly she woke Kayla back up and began to explain. Kayla understood she had to talk to the police officers to catch the 2 mean girls from McDonald's. She held her mom's hand the entire time and was a big help to the officers. The police asked very calm questions and made sure to give her lots of time to answer. Nicole bit her lip. Would this be enough? Her little girl couldn't remember all the descriptions because she had been distracted waiting for the bathroom. Nicole was so mad she had been on her phone and missed it when the 2 girls walked by her. She needed to do something else, but what else was in her control? She opened her laptop and began to type. After showing the police out and tucking Kayla into bed, Nicole knew she had to share their experience with the local community. Everyone knew the teenagers in town had been causing problems lately, and Nicole wanted to warn all the other local parents. Nicole wrote on her Facebook post, to the 2 young blonde girls that thought it would be hilarious to put super glue on the disabled and baby-changing toilet in McDonald's, I just want you to know that I still have to console my 4-year-old daughter who was unfortunate enough to use the toilet after your little prank. Nicole was surprised when she woke up in the morning and found her post had gone viral. Many parents were outraged and had started sharing the post to alert others in the community. This wasn't just a prank, this was completely insensitive and dangerous. Anyone could have sat on that toilet next, and the sheer lack of care about who they harmed was terrifying. Nicole had taken a few days off work to help Kayla feel better, but all she wanted was the teenage girls to be caught. Where were they hiding? What did their parents think? Nicole and Kayla had many friends in their community, and several people dropped by their house in the next few days to visit. Nicole was really touched by the outpouring of support from her community. She began to feel safer about leaving the house with Kayla. Just because one bad thing had happened doesn't mean they were in danger all the time. She shared her frustrations with the other parents and got their advice on what she could do to feel better. Everyone understood it was a very tough position to be in. All you ever want as a parent is to keep your child safe and happy. Nicole hadn't failed her daughter, but she wasn't sure. Plus, there was one more conversation she needed to have with Kayla. Kayla had so many questions about why the girls had put the super glue on the toilet. She couldn't understand why anyone would do this. Nicole wanted to help her understand, but she was also at a loss for words. She always wanted to teach Kayla to make good decisions, but what these teenagers did was pure evil. Kayla was so young, it wasn't time for her to know about terrible people in the world. She wanted her daughter to think most people were kind, but now she needed to have a conversation about bad people. How would Kayla understand? Would she ever feel safe again? And would the girls be found? Kayla sat in her mother's lap and listened closely as they talked about what happened in McDonald's. She knew not everyone was kind, but it was hard to grasp that some people were mean for no reason. She asked her mother if she had done anything wrong, but Nicole assured her this wasn't her fault. Kayla felt confused but tried to understand. Nicole's heart broke, consoling her daughter and telling her it wasn't her fault. She really wanted these girls caught and brought to justice. They lived in such a small town, where could they be hiding? When the two teen girls had left McDonald's, they hadn't realized just how terrible their actions had been. They walked down the sidewalk laughing and went to go find their friends. They quickly told others what they had done, but only a couple of people laughed. With the mixed reactions from their friends, the girls pretended not to care, but they began to wonder if they had done something wrong. They woke up in the morning, and someone sent them Nicole's viral Facebook post. They both agreed, they had messed up. It was time to confess, but what would their punishment be? The girls went together and turned themselves over to the police. They were both nervous and hadn't told their parents what had happened. The police officers said they made the right decision coming in, but they had done a horrible thing. Due to their age, they would have to call their parents. When their parents arrived at the station, it was time to explain everything. The girls hung their heads in shame and felt the disappointment and embarrassment of their actions. The police said there were two more people that deserve an apology and explanation. The girls knew it was coming, but how could they possibly look Nicole or Kayla in the eye? Instead of coming into the station, the girls spoke to Nicole and Kayla on the phone. Nicole didn't want to see these girls again and told them her daughter was still scared about the experience. She hoped they would be punished and truly think before they acted next time. One of the girls tried to apologize by saying it was a prank gone wrong, but Nicole had no patience for such a weak excuse. They had seen her daughter waiting for the bathroom and knew she was too young to realize what was on the toilet. She told the officers to press charges, and both the teenagers broke down in tears. Had they ruined their future with one simple prank? The girls were being charged with vandalism. In the UK, this could be 3 months imprisonment or a fine of £2,500. Due to their age, their parents paid the fine, but the girls would now also have a permanent record. The officers hoped this would be the wake-up call they needed for future decisions. Due to the act of vandalism happening at McDonald's, it was actually on the corporation to press charges and sort out what would happen next. Nicole hoped the corporation would do the right thing, but her main priority was always making sure Kayla would be okay. What did their future look like after the incident? Since the teenage girls had confessed, Nicole felt better about getting back into their regular routine. Kayla was also ready to forget what happened and was excited to eat more nuggets from their local McDonald's. Nicole never forgot how quickly the manager had acted and made sure to go back and thank Joanna in person. The local McDonald's developed new strict rules, and teenagers stopped using it as a hangout location. Slowly things began to go back to normal, and Kayla's injuries also started to heal. Would this small family ever forget what happened at this McDonald's? What is the bigger message for other families to pay attention to? Nicole thinks there are a couple of messages that everyone can learn from this experience. She hopes teenagers will think before they act and not give in to peer pressure. There are serious consequences for terrible actions. Nicole also hopes that Kayla will still see the good in people and not let one experience convince her the world is a scary place. She knows it's a tough job for parents everywhere to protect their children, but she also thinks it's a critical discussion for all families to have.